Now, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's come up with an original line. Here it is.
Donald Trump is also very old and a racist and a neo-Nazi. But anyways, I'm not even going to talk about Trump right now.
Brad, clearly AOC has zero interest in toning down the inflammatory rhetoric, which has really come under fire in the last week.
Yeah, if she had any decency, she would. It is an offensive and ridiculous comparison, invoking Hitler or neo-Nazis to describe Donald Trump. Look, Trump was president of our country for 4 years. He did some things I agreed with. He did some things I disagreed with. But one thing he absolutely never did was kill 6 million Jewish people. At the RNC last week, we saw everybody from all walks of life get up on that stage and endorse Trump. And that includes Jewish people. That includes black people. That includes gay people. It includes all sorts of people from all sorts of walks of life. And look, Trump honestly likes anybody who likes him, if we're being honest. So any of this notion, you don't have to agree with his policies in every case. You don't have to think he's an upstanding citizen with pure moral backbone exactly, but anybody claiming that he is a neo-Nazi or comparing him to Hitler is engaged in some of the most ridiculous, dangerous, and reprehensible hyperbole imaginable. I mean, the guy just days ago survived a near-miss attempted assassination, and the Democrats like AOC are already back to comparing him to Hitler and invoking Nazism. It's absolutely unhinged.
Yeah, well, Brad, AOC's mad, but they're mad on MSNBC as well, which I know is not news to you. But news anchor Alex Wagner reckoned that JD Vance's desire to be buried with his ancestors, I would have thought that's fairly normal. But no, that makes him a misogynistic white supremacist. Have a listen.
I sort of understand the idea of sharing the burial plot, but it also it reveals someone who believes that the history that the family should inherit, and indeed the history that should be determinative in the story of the Vance family, is the history of the Eastern Kentucky Vances, and not the Vances from San Diego, which is where his wife is from and where her Indian parents are from.
Brad, I'm convinced racism only continues to exist in America because the left are so determined to keep it alive.
Yeah, look, they keep doing this where they make everything about white men and maleness and white supremacy when it's actually not. And in throwing around those terms like candy on Halloween, they're diluting them of their meaning, and they're just further reinforcing the divides between groups and making these things into exponentially bigger issues than they actually have to be. It is patently absurd. It is ridiculous to suggest that wanting to be buried where generations of your family have been before you have been laid to rest somehow makes you a white supremacist or a male supremacist. I mean, J.D. Vance's wife is a second-generation Indian immigrant. So her parents, she was born in America, but her parents came here from India. So there is no plot with 6 generations of that side of the family for them to be laid to rest in anywhere in the U.S., which is where they live and have built a life. So the idea that, well, wanting to be buried with his family and not hers is white supremacist or something is ridiculous. It's a completely unreasonable thing to say. And to me, it just shows how hopelessly out of touch these MSNBC cable news liberal elites are with the American people, because millions of Americans surely feel the same way as J.D. Vance, but don't have a racist or sexist bone in their body, and they really are diluting these accusations of their meaning by just overusing them ad infinitum. It's really something to behold, guys.
But even, speaking of MSNBC, Brad, Joy Reid, for example, she was out there comparing Joe Biden's COVID diagnosis to Donald Trump being assassinated. I'm not sure how she could possibly draw a parallel, but how embarrassing.
It's so embarrassing, and that's the thing. I can understand as an opinion host on television having your opinions, right? That's what we do, but I can't understand debasing and humiliating myself in such a pathetic and partisan manner to shill for one side with kindergarten level logic in the way that these folks do, the Joy Reids of the world. I mean, I just saw her talk about how the black people who support Trump are just white adjacent. It's really something. I mean, they can they can get away with anything. They really can. I mean, and whereas, of course, right-wing media or conservative media here in the US is constantly put under a microscope, they can say the most absurd and ridiculous and nonsensical things on MSNBC or CNN, and they'll either get no scrutiny for it in the mainstream press, or they'll just applaud them and lap it up. It's really quite something to see how ideologically captured the mainstream media is.
I've learned a new term thanks to you tonight, Brad. White adjacent. I've not heard that one before. Hey, before we let you go, there's been a lot of criticism, obviously, of the Secret Service, particularly their use of women in Trump's protection detail. Homeland Security was moved to release a statement defending female agents and calling criticism baseless and insulting. Here's my question. Do they have a point, or are they just doubling down on stupid?
Well, they would have a point if they hadn't specifically implemented two sets of standards for male and female agents. I don't think there should be no women in the Secret Service, but I think everybody should have to meet the same standards. However, right now, there's a separate standard of physical standards on terms of running time, push-ups, sit-ups, crunches that is lower for women. So you can get in with lower physical requirements. Of course, that's going to open you up to criticism that then the women you put in place, especially when there's very embarrassing footage like there is from how it all went down, that you've put women who don't belong in the job. I'm not somebody who's on the page of, no women should ever be in the Secret Service. I think, especially in things like the First Lady's detail, there's probably an important need for some women, but they have opened themselves up to this kind of criticism, so it's not unjustified because of their full-throated embrace of DEI insanity at the expense of merit, which when it comes to things that are literally questions of life and death has absolutely no place in any sensible society.
No, you're exactly right. Brad Polumbo, always great to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this evening.